What's the difference between a low 4K and a high 5K player? Just refinement, basically. Low 4K players, they kind of know, they pretty much know how to play the game, but they do stupid things. Like they farm where they shouldn't, and their teamwork is not the best. And they're not really careful in lane, and they don't see kill potential as much. High 4K players, they will see kill potentials, they won't get out of position as much, they're better at warding, they're better at teamwork stuff. It's basically just like you know the game, but you super refine yourself, and you're a lot more careful in terms of kills. What hero is the best to climb MMR? It's basically whatever you're good at, whatever you think is good. There's a lot of heroes that you can pick to climb MMR with, but it mostly comes down to you and your playstyle. I mean, you can play supports to climb MMR. You can pick snowball carries. You can pick snowball mids. If we throw out some examples, we could say like Troll is good, Juggernaut, Bloodseeker, Night Stalker is probably pretty good, but I feel like nobody plays Night Stalker. You could do stuff like that. Snowball carries are good if your mechanics are good. You can raise MMR with support. That's what I did. I raised my MMR with support. Friend of yours climbed 1K with Omni. Omni would work as well. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a carry. Omni would be really good for climbing MMR, as would Abaddon. Both those two heroes would be really good because you can turn fights and it gets your team a lot of gold advantage and stuff. How's OD's viability? He's fine, I guess, but he's not popular mid, and Sniper is a counter to OD, so that's probably the main reason that you don't see OD anymore. Sniper is one of the best OD counters because he's got super range, he doesn't need mana, and if he does shrapnel, it's really low mana cost. It's really good. Yeah, Slark's pretty good for climbing MMR as well. I would agree with that completely. Slark's a good example of a snowball carry. Just outplay your opponents with fucking Dark Pact and Lothars and shit like that. Lothars means Shadowblade. And then, yeah, you can probably gain MMR that way. No, I'm actually done. I'm not going to play anymore, but I'll answer some more questions if you guys want. Anyways, alright, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to run a 60-second ad, and then I'll be back and I'll answer questions for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'm going to be done. So I'll see you guys in a bit. Oops. Alright, so for those of you guys that can still hear me, which is probably most of you, okay. Alright, I am going to guess that it's been about 60 seconds with delay. First of all, if you guys haven't noticed yet, I'm sponsored by the Score Esports. They have an Android app. You guys can check it out. I'm going to link some articles in chat that Hopid wrote. They're fantastic. You can read them online and then download the app on Android. They're working on the iOS one. Yeah, I would actually like to talk about the Caudle thread. There was a thread on Reddit said a guy climbed to 6K as Caudle, and I thought that was weird. I was like, wow, 6K in Caudle, and I downloaded the replay and I watched it. I watched his getting to 6K game at least, and it's one of those. It makes you have less faith in MMR, kind of, and not that MMR is a good scale, but the guy played well. Like he played pretty well, but he made a lot of mistakes as well. He kind of got carried that game, but I'm sure that wasn't. It's not like he got carried to 6K or anything. But that game, his team really overperformed. I felt his team played really well, but like he died a moderate. He like did okay in the offlane. He did a dual offlane, which shuts down their farm. So what his method to gain MMR is to like make his player become more valuable. Is he does dual offlane. He tries to get one of his allies to do a Magnus, and then he's really positive. So being positive is like one good way to make your team play better. So that's one way that his MMR is technically higher, because he like MMR is how likely you are to influence your chances of winning the game. And this guy is really positive. He works really well with his team. He like says nice things. He compliments people if they play well. That raises morale. That makes his team play better. So he's basically effectively raising his team's morale, despite him maybe not being better. He's raising morale. Now, again, I don't want to say that this guy's bad because he wasn't a bad player, but he didn't have to do anything super flashy. He didn't look like a 6K player to me. Like, I wouldn't watch that game and be like, yeah, this Caudle was 6K. He played the game really well as a support, but what he really did was he influenced the game in a way that allowed him to get to 6K because he had really big impact. He did a dual lane that was really effective. He did a really good job harassing the carry, and it was a Slark, and the Slark got no farm, and he drained all of his mana because he used Truck or he used Mana Leak. So he like kept the Slark's manas really low. The Slark didn't get farmed, the Slark didn't get levels, the Slark didn't get kills. The Magnus got farmed, the Magnus got tons of mana, the Magnus got kills. So he basically like shuts down one of their heroes. They get 3 farming lanes instead of just 2.5 or something like that. So he pressures a lot that way. And then his first major item is Aghanims. And he did a good job team fighting. It looked like he organized his team as well, which is another way that you can raise your MMR. If you direct your team in the right way, then you're technically making their MMR better because you're making up for their lackings in team fight and decision making. So that's another way to raise your MMR. So the guy played Caudle. He denied their safe lane. He had a good dual lane. He asked his team to pick heroes that are synergistic with Caudle, so he got a Storm on his team, which he can give mana to. And then after that, as soon as he got eggs, he just crapped on the enemy team. Basically, he like went around looking for kills. He would bring Storm if there was a fight, like a gank that was really easy, and then they would just get so much map control that the game was over. And then they went high ground when it's daytime, and then he would Illuminate, and the Illuminate would obviously heal creeps and allies, so then you can just endlessly push at that point. So it was like a 25-minute win. His team did pretty well, but with a Caudle with eggs, you can actually do that pretty fast. So basically, to watch the guy play, his mechanics were arguably no better than mine. But what he did was he very wisely influenced his team in a smart way. And he also picked a hero that isn't very common. And he also did a really smart dual lane and also got his team to pick around him, which was really smart. So those kind of things are other things that you can do. You don't have to pick Slark just to raise your MR. You don't have to just get amazing at mechanics to win the game. Like that's how Blitz got to 7K. He just got really good mechanics and he got really refined and he played his best heroes. Not that he can't win 7K with other heroes, but he tried really hard with super high mechanics to get to 7K, and that's how he got 7K. But this Caudle did it in a different way. He didn't get it in super high mechanics, he did it with a positive team impact. So there's lots of ways to gain MMR, but the Caudle way is definitely a way to do it. But it doesn't, it sounds like I'm being really negative about the Caudle player, but it doesn't look flashy what he did at all, but it was smart. And that's another way to get to 6K or to get really high MMR. You just have to play really smart. Like once you get past 5K or something, then it comes down to your method and really impacting the game well. And he took a method that was very game impactful. So his mechanics are maybe not as good as a 6K player who plays mid and gets to 6K, but obviously statistically his impact is still as good as one of those mid players. That's the best thing I think that pretty much outlines everything. Nobody's even asking about the Caudle anymore, but I really felt like talking about that because I thought it was interesting. It like gives me hope personally that I can get to 6K because when I see somebody do something like that and I'm like, I can do everything this guy did mechanically, and it looked like maybe his map awareness was about as good as mine, maybe better, I don't know. It's hard to tell that in replays, that's the biggest thing. You can't predict what they're predicting. It's hard to do that, to be like, oh, they obviously they're watching the map at so-and-so time, but they didn't look with their screen. That kind of stuff is really hard to tell, but it gives me hope that I can get 6K or something like that. But you just have to like get really good at impacting the game. And maybe the way that I play the game is too passive. I just like safe. I should maybe try doing like dual off lanes like that or something like that. So there's a lot of different ways to raise MMR basically. You can play snowball mids. You can do some cheesy crap like jungling Bloodseeker and then come out at like 10 minutes with a Midas and a phase boots or something. I've seen Bloodseekers wreck games like that too. There's a lot of different stuff you can do. What is the Caudle player? Some guy got 6K MMR just playing Caudle, he said. And he played really well. Impacted the game in a good way. I should talk about this stuff on my YouTube VODs. The problem is that I'd have to like just edit a chunk of video, which maybe I'll do, I don't know. But I know sometimes I go on talks like these that I feel are constructive, but usually it's like after a stream and it's not, I don't know, maybe it'd be good to upload stuff like that, like 10-minute musings about random topics. But they're never really constructed, I'm just doing them impromptu, so I never bother to make a video out of them. But maybe I should. Alright, do I think Phantom Lancer will see play now? Yeah, I think Phantom Lancer is really good. I don't think he's necessarily OP, but I think he's a good hero. It was not Coddle guy, no, it was some other guy that plays Coddle. Haven't heard anything about TI. We won't hear anything about TI for probably 3 months. 2 to 3 months. When's the next Dota for Grandma video? Hopefully soon. I still have to do some guide rework stuff, which I am gonna work on more this week. I'm gonna try to do a first episode that covers all the basics, like without even showing a Dota game. And then the second video will be me showing a Dota game and going super basic. It's just, I kind of executed it really bad when I made the last one, so I want to be really careful that I do it correctly the next time. That's why I haven't done it yet. I can't really just sit down and do it, because that's why I tried last time and it didn't work at all. So that's why I have to be careful. How many hours of Dota do I have? A lot. For Dota 2, 8,062 hours logged into the Dota 2 client. Some of that is just sitting in the game. I actually leave my Dota up way too often, but I would guess at least 6,000 hours of that are active. At least. A lot of that was from casting as well. But 8,000 hours in like 4 years? Yeah. I've had the game for 4 years in August. What kind of tweaks would I recommend for the most picked heroes in this patch? The way that Ice Frog buffs and nerfs things is really smart. He does sideways nerfs. So what that means is, like, if you look at Troll, or let's say Juggernaut. Let's look at Juggernaut. What's overpowered about Juggernaut? His Omni Slash does a lot of damage. His right click does a stupid amount of damage with Mask of Madness. Rather than, this is maybe a bad example because that's what they did. Rather than just reducing his damage, what they can do instead is reduce his armor, for example. And technically that happened. What happened to Jug is he got his agility gain nerfs. That means in the late game, his total damage and armor is lower. But what you can also do is say, oh, if this guy has too much damage, why don't we just nerf his tankiness? So he still does equal damage, which still makes him a useful hero, but he just is squishier. So that's a better way to nerf things, because if you just nerf his damage, then all of a sudden he just becomes a hero that doesn't do very good damage, and there's better reason to pick other heroes. So the correct way to design a game with this many choices is you want a lot of heroes that are very diverse, that do interesting things, that have their own strengths. That way there is a time to use them. And that's what's cool about Dota, is that sometimes you'll see a hero pick just because some other hero trends. You're like, oh, this hero's trending like crazy and he's brand new, like nobody's been playing him. So then you'll all of a sudden see some other random hero that counters him. Like people will play Dazzle more often because there was so much armor strats going around. Just because you can counter the armor and give yourself armor. That's cool. Like, that's the better way to design the game. That's how you should buff and nerf in most cases. Omni Slash, for example, they didn't reduce the damage, but they reduced the cast range, so they made it harder to use Omni Slash. The Omni Slash is still good, but it wasn't as, you're not as able to just like jump across the map and Omni Slash a guy. Do I think Techies should be played in a ranked match? Yeah, I think that's fine. Techies is a decent hero, honestly. I really don't think he's bad at all. He can be played in ranked. There's a lot of like space you can create on the game with Techies. You can get a lot of kills. You can kill a lot of supports. You can kill cores. You can kill people that are good players if they make a little bit of a mistake. Like I played Techies against what was it, like Slicks? Slicks was on our team when we were in Zephyr in Korea. He's a super good player. He's over 6k. And I played Techies offlane, and I don't think I played the game super well, but I killed him like once or twice. And like solo killing a carry, like a really good player, just solo killing him in the mid or late game, it's so strong. Like, you just add this weird unpredictability in the game. That's one of the strengths of Techies. How do I deal with a 10+ losing streak and ranked at 1.5k MMR? I think your main issues are going to be probably decision making in terms of fights and stuff like that. You got to get better at understanding when fights are smart to take, and you're also going to have to get better at last sitting. Get those mechanics up, practice last sitting in a custom lobby, and the last thing I would say is make sure that you double check to see that your item builds are correct and your skill builds are correct. The best way to do that is to watch people stream who are better than you and duplicate what they do. Or like watch a pro game. Watching a pro game is a really good way to see what people think is the most viable item build. stuff like that. Yeah, a lot of people get mad when people pick Techies, but they're stupid when they get mad because Techies is completely viable. There's nothing wrong with playing Techies and picking Techies. I think he's a good hero sometimes. I like never care. Honestly, it never bothers me when my team picks Techies. If their team picks Techies and it plays them bad, it's really good. Like when I played against Techies earlier today, that guy played Techies pretty bad, in my opinion. And it's fine then. Then you just crap on them and you beat them. If they don't set good mind traps, then Techies is bad. If they're good at setting mind traps, then you're good. So, alright, I'm going to answer like 3 more questions and then I'm done. Who do you play to calibrate MMR? Calibrating MMR is pretty irrelevant to what your MMR is. The most important thing you can do to raise your MMR when you're initially calibrated is play really well while you play unranked, while you raise your levels. Because all that, alright, I'm still hypothesizing this, but I'm going to continue repeating this because I think it's probably true. The way that MMR calibration works is that while you play unranked, you actually have an MMR, it's just secret. They don't tell you what it is. So your MMR is always developing while you play ranked or unranked. And then when you actually go to rank, what it's actually checking is to see how hard you try when you're really trying. Because a lot of people dick around in unranked, and maybe they're having fun, or maybe they random heroes. When they're actually trying, it's checking to see what the difference between how you actually try and what your unranked is. So those 10 games you can lose, you can play like shit in those games. It'll probably like dump you down like a couple hundred MMR points below, but it's still going to be based on your regular ranking. So don't worry too much about the placement matches. Just try as hard as you do, pick your best heroes, or pick your best heroes, and that'll give you the highest MMR possible. 2 more questions. You have 15 kills on average on Techies but still lose most games. I don't know, that sounds weird, man. Maybe you're not building the right items. I like to I'm not going to use this as a question because it's kind of weird, but I think you need to translate into team fighting on Techies. Get a lot of kills, get Aghanims, get a blink, and then when team fights happen, you can blink and drop stasis traps, so you can blink and put ultis down. And that does 600 magic damage in a fight. That's amazing. That's like an AoE level 1 Finger of Death. You should be able to influence team fights in a really positive way as Techies, because you can farm fast, get a sheep, get stuff like that. You frequently panic during team fights. You don't really know what you should be doing during a fight and whether you should run or keep fighting. Do you have any advice on how to assess a fight? I think when I was a newer player, what I would do is I learned to, if I felt like I was dying, I would run away. And then when I felt like I was safe, I would look at the fight and I would think like, can I come back in and throw a spell without dying? And I just kind of learned like that. And also I just kind of learned by playing more games. It's kind of a bad example, but you just have to get better at reading situations. Like I don't play Dota very well in that when I look at a team fight, I don't think about the spells everybody has. I just look at it like what heroes I think are squishy. I'll like look and I'll see a line and I'll be like, all right, line has disables, I know that. But he's really squishy. He's always squishy. In every Dota game ever, he's squishy. So I say, that guy's squishy. I don't check his items. I should. Everybody should. But I don't check his items. That's kind of how I do things. So I say, like, that guy's squishy, that guy's tanky. That's kind of how I decide to go on people. It's always better to go on supports if you can, or heroes that are super out of position. The order of operations is, if somebody's way out of position, you go on them. The next target should be supports. And then the next targets after that is usually carries that are kind of squishy but have a lot of damage. Or carries that have BKBs. If you can chain stun them and nuke them down before they're able to pop BKB, that's another really good target too. So one more. What should you be focusing on in 2.5k to move up? If you're a 2.5k player, you're sitting somewhere close to the 50th percentile. What you should focus on is probably, well, the easiest generic term to say is efficiency. Definitely efficiency, but to break that down by role. If you're playing carry, you need to get better at last hitting. I guarantee that you're getting less than 50 CS a minute, or for 10 minutes, the first 10 minutes, and you have to get that up. I understand that sometimes you're going to be in a duel lane, but you have to get more last hits. And think about it this way. If you get 5 more last hits than your opponent, you're going to have slightly more gold than them. And then that's going to mean you get your items slightly earlier, and it's going to give you a higher chance to win your team fights. So without saying get better at Dota, the easiest thing you can do is get better at last hitting. Because I guarantee that 2.5k players get less than 40 CS at 10 minutes. I bet every single person in that game gets less than 50 CS at 10 minutes. So if you can just raise your CS by 10 per 10 minutes, you're going to drastically increase your ability to win games. So if you really want to get better at Dota, just go into a custom lobby, maybe like once or twice a day. I mean, once or twice a day, and just practice last hitting. If you practice last hitting once in a while in a custom lobby, I guarantee you will get better at last hitting, and your MMR will go up, because you will get 50 CS by 10 minutes, and it's going to increase your farm rate, which will increase your ability to kill your opponent in lane. And once your farming is perfect, if you get at least 50 CS at 10 minutes, then and you're still not raising an MMR, then you should focus on other stuff. But definitely farming is the first one. And try not to spend a lot of time like standing around in groups of 5. Low level players do that all the time. They'll be like, oh, there's 3 enemy heroes mid, I better be mid, because somebody's gonna yell at me if I'm not there. But you don't always have to go do that. It's better to spread out and then have like 1 or 2 heroes counter push mid and prevent them from taking the tower, while like everybody else spreads across the map and is very efficient in farming. It's really important to be efficient in farming. So that's for the carry. For mid, it's basically the same thing. Get CS, 50 CS by 10 minutes. For supports, the efficiency comes into pulling mostly. You need to pull. You need to not waste time. You need to not miss pulls. You need to connect the pull. You need to zone the offlaner, and you need to not spend too much time just standing around waiting for something to happen. Pulling, connecting the pull, make every single pull. Don't like come over and prepare to zone the offlaner and then realize that it's too late to go pull again. Realize you lost an opportunity. Because every time you pull, it's like at least 1 level. So efficiency for supports is really important. And then supports need to work on ganking as well. For the offlaner, all you really need to work on is getting 6 pretty fast. I know that in low MMRs, it's a lot of dual lanes, so that's not the best example, but offlaners just need to learn creep equilibrium, block the pull camp, and then learn creep equilibrium to make sure the creep wave is always pushing towards you, get easy levels, and then look for kills. I feel like offlane is like a more refined version of playing mid. You're like looking for very, very slim kills, and if you get them, you win the game. Like if you play an offlane and you solo kill the enemy carry, like you just win the game. It's amazing. So that's what you should probably do. Chachi is garbage. Sometimes he's great. I appreciate Chachi too, even if I get mad at him in Dota games. All right, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, CS means last hits, same thing. CS means creep score. It's a Dota 1 too. Dota 1 thing. No, this is I didn't play it all today, Jerry. I actually just signed on to tell people stuff. So I think that's it for answers. But that advice about getting farm and efficiency is applicable for all MMRs. I went from like 4,700 to 5K just by getting more efficient at playing support. I still miss pulls a lot, which is terrible, but I increased my efficiency by a lot there, and I gank a little bit more. So all right, that's it for me, guys. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna run one more set of ads because you guys are great, and I like money, and I'll see you guys later.